I'm Matt.
I'm Kerry.
We are the Stagmer brothers of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite weapons, and some weapons that you've never seen before.
This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged. So for our Hunger Games build, we're going to be making a bow very much like Katniss used in Catching Fire. In this case, we'll make the entire thing out of metal. The center section, like the bow that she used, will be all from billet aluminum. This is 6061 T6. It's a fair amount of weight. This is about 19 pounds. We're going to be down between 1/3 and 1/4 of it totally after we do all the carving. So for the bow arms, we'll be using 4140 steel. We're going to forge it down, roll it, form the shape, recurve it, heat treat it, and then as we go, we'll have to thin it slightly until we get the power that we want. I'm trying to be very careful with this large billet of aluminum. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this diamond scribe engraver I made, mount it in the CNC machine, and then draw exactly what it is that I'm going to be cutting. So we've got 2-inch thick aluminum. We're going to cut our profile out. The cutter on this is running about 5,000 RPM and we're spraying coolant on it, so it's going to make a hell of a mess and throw chips everywhere. But it's going to take probably an hour to an hour and a half to run the entire program, so we're just going to get it going and let it make a mess.
So I sculpted the Mockingjay pendant on the Hunger Games, and the story behind it is that her mother found it in an antique store or thrift store, and it was nothing of great value. It was just something to give her strength and positive thoughts. So rather than casting it in silver gold, we decided we were going to cast it in bronze, which is probably what it was originally cast in.
So we finished the milling on the center of the bow section. We're going to take it out of here. I probably should have written a program with little tabs where I could cut all the way through, but what I did instead is I left about 10 thousandths here of the material to keep it in place. I'm going to take it off. We'll probably do some bandsaw cutting and then be able to break the different sections off. So we're going to block this down. We're going to knock off a couple of the excess pieces that we don't need so we can begin to form this. Once again, we've gone back to the blue die chem where we've painted the whole surface. It allowed me to take a scribe and lay out the lines where I'm going to make the cuts. Just going to make a couple of simple cuts, get some excess metal out, and then we'll go to the sander.
Starting with some 4140 bar stock, Ilya first heats up the material, then moves to the nasal hammer to draw out our tines for the bow.
So now that I've got the bow arms back from Ilya from forging, got to make them the same, so I'm going to do the profiles the same. These points are a little different after the forging is done. Just go around over the entire thing, make the same width, same length, and then we'll be doing some tapering by hand later on, but I just need to get them close.
Alright, we have our two bow arms here. The guys have gotten them profiled pretty much where they need to be. What has to happen now is I got to grind the surfaces nice and flat, and then go ahead and true the thicknesses up just a tad. One's a little thicker than the other, and they have to be pretty spot on or there'll be different powers when we go to shoot.
So I'm going to drill in some bolts that are going to get countersunk in to hold the limbs. On the factory bow, typically the arms are completely floating. With the steel bow, we're a little bit concerned with how strong they can be. So we're going to be drilling and tapping, setting them in with these bolts countersunk from the bottom. And then they're going to float at the top side only on one side so that we don't strain the aluminum by pulling the bow too far.
Alright, now that we have the majority of the machining done on the center of the bow here, it's time that I can start doing some sculpting on the grinder. Gotta be really careful not to remove too much material. One thing to remember when grinding aluminum, it's really bad for you and it smells really bad, so I'm definitely going to wear my respirator and I'm going to be really careful because it'll fly off a lot quicker than steel because aluminum just comes right off real fast, a lot like wood on a sander.
So now that we have the holes drilled in the limbs, the other limbs already fitted. I've laid some blue on here again, scribed it so that they match. I'm just going to take off this excess material and check the fit on the entire piece.
After the bow limbs have been ground and heat cycled a couple times, it's now time to bend them. We're going to use this rig to give them an identical curve.
For the heat treat on our bow halves, we want to be really careful to keep this shape. So we don't want to lay them down like this in a furnace and have them slump over once they're up to heat. So what we're going to do is we're going to hang them in this furnace. What this is a couple different electric kiln rings with a big barrel that's lined in K.O. wool and then fired on a big weed burner. To do this hanging heat treat, we wrap some wire in a circle around as a loop that we're then using a hook-shaped object to lower them into the furnace. We're going to let them sit there for a while. It's a very important part. I can't tell you how stressful this part is. Any cracks in this, we're gonna have to start completely over. There's no saving these bow arms once they crack or stress fracture or anything like that. So now right after the quench, while they're still good and hot, we're gonna go right back to the preform that we used to form them in the first place, clamp them, let them cool slowly, and hopefully they retain that shape that we're looking for. All right, they're slowly cooling. Got them clamped back to the preform. They look like they retain their shape pretty well. To draw back the hardness a bit, but they look great.
So we have the two limbs. As you can see, I've got them marked out. The bottom limb is slightly thicker. I'm gonna go and just sand off the back of this. We've got to get them even before we begin shaping them. Otherwise, we'll never keep the power the same between the two. Right now, they're still very powerful, more than we can use in the bow, but I want to make them the same.
Now that all our mounting brackets are figured out, machined in, and ready to go, I can do a lot more shaping on this handle. I want to give it a real ergonomic feel, so I test it in my hand as I go to make sure it feels great and gives a perfect grip.
So now we have the bow assembled, the limbs are made, they fit, they've got the recurve, we've got our string in place, everything's mounted tight the way it'll need to be. The only real problem at this point is that it's entirely too powerful. As you pull, this is certainly up close to 100 pounds. We need to get it down to about half that, which we're approximating is going to take about a quarter off the limbs. We'll do some width, we'll do some thickness, and we'll do some form to them to bring that power down to make it shootable. But we'll go through that, it'll get polished, blackened limbs, should be beautiful. Using a gas forge, we bring up the metal temperature to 2100 degrees. We have the electric kiln set to 1000 degrees to keep the temperatures even. I have this high temperature crucible set in what's called a shank that holds it so that I don't have to put my hands anywhere near it when I make the pour. The excess metal, which we call a button, is glowing right now. We're going to wait till that glow goes, it drops to 900 degrees, then we'll quench into water, revealing the finished piece. With so many of these pendants available online, we wanted to have something that really stood out. This is larger and I think much more refined than most of the things I've seen available.
Now that we're completely done with the polishing and the smoothing over our bow center, we're going to place it into our vibratory tumbler. It's filled with little ceramic beads that vibrates and gets all over the surface, makes everything perfectly smooth, and leaves you with that nice little stipply surface that you love to see on aluminum parts.
I've taken a lot of time to bring down the power on this bow, but even though I can now shoot it, it's very difficult to string.
Alright, one of my last steps to do on this build is to black oxidize our bow arms. I'm going to do that with a little bit of acid and my trusty Scotch-Brite pad. I'm going to rub the surface with the acid until I get that dark color that I'm looking for. It's really nice, real subtle, looks a lot like the bow from the movie. Very happy with it. Ready to get some string on this and shoot it.
I hadn't built a bow probably for 15 or 20 years and never anything this modern. I was really pleased with the way it turned out, and it really brought my interest back into archery. Click here to subscribe, or click here to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching Man-at-Arms Reforged. We need to know what you want the guys to build, so tell us in the comments below what weapons you want to see next.